Hello and welcome to this webinar delivered by the ISM Trust in partnership with the Amber Trust. I'm Maria Visitiu and I'm Member Engagement and Events Officer at the ISM. And today I'm joined by Sarah Osborne, Head of Business Development at the ISM, who will give a quick introduction shortly, and Professor Adam Ockelford, founder of the Amber Trust, who will conduct today's presentation. Before we begin, we have a few points for you. You should be able to see us and the PowerPoint presentation displayed on your screen, but we can't hear you or see you. If you experience any technical difficulties, such as sound quality, please let us know in the question box and we'll attempt to resolve the issue. If you think of any questions during this webinar, please let us know in the Q&A box and we will leave some time at the end to answer as many of them as possible. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on the ISM's website at ism.org/webinars. Now, without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah and I hope you enjoy.
Great, thank you, Maria, and good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to have you with us. I'm delighted to welcome you to the launch of With Music in Mind in partnership with the Amber Trust. This webinar is brought to you by the ISM Trust, the sister charity of the ISM. We set up the Trust 6 years ago to provide high quality professional development to the sector, often working in partnership with other organisations. And in fact, this is the second project that we have worked on with the Amber Trust, as we supported the launch of their Amber Sound Touch resource back in June. If we have any teachers in our audience, I do encourage you to take a look at this resource, which is full of ideas and support for how you can work and teach blind and partially sighted students. Today, though, we're here to learn about With Music in Mind, Amber Trust's new service for families with a visually impaired child with a neurodegenerative disease. It is the culmination of 3 years' research by Dr. Adam Ockelford in collaboration with the University of Roehampton. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Adam, who will take us through the webinar. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and welcome everyone. If there's one service I think that Amber provides that I'm most proud of, it must surely be With Music in Mind, because it really is for a very, very deserving group of young people. And it really is the case that for them, music is the most important thing in their lives. Here we go. So With Music in Mind has two elements. First of all, for those who are in the earlier stages of the disease, they can access Amber's awards as other children can. And that means payment for singing lessons or instrumental lessons, or maybe a contribution towards the cost of an instrument. And for those who are in the later stages of the disease, we offer a dedicated service with monthly visits from specially trained practitioners. There's also a free resource pack and access to our online materials. So which children and young people are we talking about? Well, thankfully, juvenile dementia, as you can think of it, is very rare. But there are, for those children and the families who have the disease, it can be devastating. And there are a number of diseases which you see there that cause blindness as well as other disabilities. The most common disease that people working in the field of visual impairment tend to come across is Batten disease. And there are a number of variants of Batten disease, as we can see later on. We work very closely with the Batten Disease Family Association in the UK and the BDRSA, the Batten Research Disease Association in the United States, as well as groups across Europe. And that's really very important because it is a very rare disease, but nonetheless, as I said, music is definitely the single most important element that pervades the whole of a child's life. And that really is the point of With Music in Mind. So our new service is based on two important research projects. The first one was a European-wide project from 2014 to 2017, and that took evidence from almost 200 parents and professionals across the EU and also in the United States. And then there was the research we undertook at the University of Roehampton from 2016-2018, funded by the Baillie Thomas Charitable Fund. And really, we work very closely with 13 children and young people and their families. And I'm incredibly grateful to them because it was their insights that really led us to develop the new service. So what did we find? Well, a key finding from the European project was that music becomes more important, more and more important, in fact, as Batten disease in this case, but juvenile dementia more generally progresses. The graph you can see shows young people at different stages of their lives. The first group of 4 bars is when children are 7. The next one is when they're 10, 13, 16, and then all the way up to the age of 22. And you can see the growing importance of music in the blue bars. Music is represented by the blue vertical bars. So when children are little, it's actually physical activity and sport that tends to be the most important thing in their lives. And gradually you can see how that changes as the disease progresses. So by the time they're 22, it's music that's important. And clearly for those people working in the field, that means that it's no use waiting until someone's 22 to start doing something about it. Really, we have to infuse music into the lives of these children right from the start, so that they have the maximum opportunity to engage as they get older. A key finding from our own research, which is really very important, is the fact that musical abilities seem to deteriorate more slowly than others in children with Batten disease. The graph on the left with the orange bars is the musical capacity of the children across about 3 years there. And so you can see how the ability to engage in music as listeners, as participants, and as people interacting with others more or less stayed the same for the whole of the 3 years of the project. The graph on the right with the grey bars shows their other abilities, their cognitive abilities, their capacity to speak and interact with others. And you can see how rapidly over a period of 32 months that declined. And yet music remained more or less the same. And clearly that's terribly important because, as we'll see, music can impact on other areas of children's engagement. Perhaps the most important single thing that music can do is to support language and communication. One of the features of Batten disease and a number of other diseases is that the ability to speak is very badly affected. And now I've got two videos of Olivia. The first one is her trying to recount a story of something that recently happened to her. And you'll see how difficult it is for Olivia to speak. The second video is of her singing, and you'll see how she lacks no difficulties at all in being able to sing a song. People say, well, why is that the case? And neuroscience at the moment seems to indicate that music and language both share some overlapping resources. So there's something common about them, but they also have different routes into the brain. And it seems that with things like Batten disease, and indeed with dementia in older people, the direct route into language is damaged and can't be accessed. And yet the language is still there, and it's attached to the musical memories that a person has. And so we can access the musical memories through the music channel, then we can get the language out. So first of all, then, here's Olivia speaking.
Say that again. First. Yeah. Not speak to the word. I mean, enough. No, they weren't. Oh, no. That's no good, is it? No.
And now here's Olivia singing.
Who am I living for? Is this my limit? Can I ignore some more? Is a limit? Question existing.
You just see how striking that is, how with the music, it triggers a different part of Olivia's brain and she's able to pace her language. Now, in the research we did, we used some specially created songs that I call micro songs. And what they do, they take that capacity of the brain to link music and language, and they link simple, specially prepared songs with everyday words. And that way, the children we were working with were able to keep communicating for longer. Here's a young woman I was working with for a number of years called Lily. And you can see her discussing her wishes to choose something for breakfast and then talking about her feelings. First of all, here's the food and drink song.
And later on we might say, what would you like for your snack, Lily? And you're going to say, I would like some cream. And we might say, what would you like to drink, Lily? And you say, I would like some squash.
And here's Lily discussing her feelings. Lily is really one of the most remarkable young people I've ever worked with. She's cheerful the whole time, and everyone with her has to be cheerful too. There is no question. And here's Lily saying that she's happy and also that she wants us to be happy.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you feeling today? You asked me, Derek, I want Lily to do it. Ready? Go on, how are you feeling? I'm feeling happy.
There you are. That's just a tiny taste of the micro songs. All the songs that we use are available on the Amber Trust website. There's actually 64 of them in all. And we found that not only, in fact, with children with Batten disease and similar diseases, but also across the spectrum of complex needs, these songs can be terribly helpful in promoting communication. Another key finding was that music, we also know, just as music and language are closely associated in the brain, so are music and movement. They're right next door to each other. And a very early response to music, in fact, is to move. As we know, right from the few months old, any baby will start jigging about when they hear music. It really is something that's hardwired into us. And that capacity to move to music seems again to last long after the ability just to move alone disappears. Again, we find this with adults with dementia as well. It's well known that people will start to dance, for example, when they hear a well-known piece of music from earlier on. And here we've got an example of young Ollie, who's using an iPad to play music. He can just move his arm, but with a program called Echo String, he's able to join in. As he draws his arm over the iPad, he joins in with the song that I'm singing. Here's Ollie in action.
Ollie, play a song while we sing. Ollie, play a song. Oh, join in. Ollie, play a song. While we sing.
So there you see Ollie's still able to engage actively and with clear enjoyment in a musical dialogue. Memory is also a key thing. It's sort of implied really in the work that we were doing with language, but music can also not only stimulate language and movement, it can also stimulate memories. And again, a lot of work with adult dementia shows this. At the Royal Blind School in Edinburgh, they were using memory books, which included all sorts of things. They included concert tickets, recordings, they included photographs, so someone working with a young person could recall what was happening on a particular occasion where music was important. And a key part of the new service we're offering is that everyone will have a record, it's called, of their musical engagements. That could be sounds from a holiday, for example, maybe from a birthday party. And music has a unique way into those memories when language alone, for example, doesn't. And memory is incredibly important, and music is embedded deep in human memories. Music can be a great way of having fun, really. Here's Scarlett. She absolutely loves ABBA, and For her, really, the music is a way of socializing and having fun with others. In this case, making her mum sing along with the ABBA songs. But I think that sense of fun and enjoyment is absolutely crucial to music. Life can be pretty tough, very, very tough actually. But music can be a way of almost escaping from some of that and entering a slightly different world where things are good and you can still make contact with other people. We found that music and sound can aid an awareness and understanding of the world by using what we called sounds of reference. These are objects that actually make sounds. So for example, by having wind chimes in a doorway, that can let someone who can't see know whereabouts they are. And within school, different sound reference can be put in different places so that it's almost like the equivalent really of different signs. If you think not being able to see, you can't necessarily see the sign on a classroom or the pictures on the wall. By having sounds, a sound trail, for example, or particular sounds associated with particular places, particular environments, particular activities, particular people, that can help one understand their environment when language is perhaps more difficult. A critical thing that we found over and over again talking to young people and families was that music can help them express their feelings and promote a sense of well-being. One of the great joys really of work in the last few years has been getting to know Luke and his family. Luke is the most amazing young man and music is central to his life. It really does enable him to express his feelings and he's passionate about his music. It generates a sense of identity and belonging within a music group in a way that nothing else can. And so here's Luke talking about his own feelings about music.
He says music's cathartic for him. It helps him relax. It helps him
and takes him away somewhere else. I think it's another planet almost in his head. He said God took my eyes and put them in my ears.
Yeah.
And he's just embraced music. It's his entire life.
I hear music is like, I don't know, makes me more like positive thinking. Which is why I don't like really, I don't know, like maybe more like you know, the blind doesn't really care. Which is why really, because I take quality out of life because I love music.
I think if Luke's testimony, you don't really need anything more than that to say why with music in mind. So now moving on to the resources. The resources are based on the findings of the 2 research projects and also the Sounds of Intent framework of musical development, which is something that we've been working on at University of Roehampton and with University College London and other partners for about 20 years now. And what we've found is that musical development takes a certain path. People may tread the path in slightly different ways and at different rates, but nonetheless, that path is there. And I really expected when we started the research that just as musical development expands outwards as young people develop, I expected it to contract back as the diseases they had took their course. But actually that wasn't the case. The music seemed to stay their musical level of development, despite other things being lost. And I tried to represent that in the logo that we have for With Music in Mind. So music, as you can see, is the whole universe there. And in the central ring are the 3 elements of musical engagement that we find with Sounds of Intent. There's listening, which is terribly important and becomes more important as movement becomes more difficult. There's playing and singing, which, as we've seen with Lily and Olivia and Luke and Ollie, can actually continue through the use of technology and through the use of special songs far longer than other ways of engaging, and making music with others. And I think it was clear from Luke's testimony how important that is. That's the musical part, but around the music, framing it, are 6 areas that we found are really helped by music. Remembering, we've talked about, memories are uniquely accessed through music. There's the movement we saw with Ollie. There's the socializing that we saw with Luke, expressing feelings, again with Luke. The communicating that we saw with Olivia and with Lily, and understanding as well that we saw with the sounding objects of reference. So music becomes a sort of universe, a way of accessing the whole world. What do families get? Well, they get a set of resources, which includes a music record, and that's a loose leaf folder, a bit like the School for the Blind in Edinburgh. And it's a loose leaf folder, so young people can put whatever they want into it. It could be a concert ticket, it could be a tactile thing like a badge or something that you get at a concert. It could be a program that other people can read out for you. There's also a USB stick so that you can actually keep recordings, not only of music, but also other important sounds. Someone singing happy birthday on your 18th birthday, for example, might want to go in there. And crucially, with the record book, it can be terribly useful for stimulating memories later on in the course of the disease, so that people helping a young person can recall things through looking through the record. There are also a set of cards which give people ideas for activities to do right through the course of the disease. And it's terribly important with juvenile dementia that musical activities start early on. So do what you do with any other child, but even more, help them to engage with music. If they want to learn an instrument, I think that's great. I think it's really important that things like Braille and music Braille are accessible to young people. All the evidence shows that the more they engage with activities, the more learning they do, the better their quality of life will be. And it's absolutely critical that music education and wider education is absolute priority. All these resources are also freely available online, so that although the service we're offering will be available to families in the UK up to the age of 18, the resources are there for anyone to download and use anywhere in the world. That's really important for us. Families can also access the tuning in songs, the micro songs that Lily was using. There are two sorts really. There are songs for language that we saw Lily using, and there are songs for action that we saw Ollie using. And again, as well as being available through Amazon and other outlets, everything is available freely to download. And just to say a little bit more about how important those songs can be, this is the scheme of the tuning in songs. So as well as the feeling song that you heard Lily singing, there are also things like needs and wants. There are places you can talk about where you might want to go. There are activities, and there are people. And working with young people, they can actually use these songs even when words themselves can't be expressed. They can just perhaps hum something like means goodbye, for example. For some reason, some of the children seem to hum that during my piano lessons. I can't think why. But it really is very, very powerful, even when it's difficult to actually get words out. Music stays there, and children can hum or tap rhythms and things and can keep communicating long after than would otherwise be the case. The service that we offer from Amber includes monthly visits from a specially trained practitioner. And the key thing is, it's not so much them doing music with the child, it's all about seeking to empower family members, parents and siblings and friends, grannies and uncles, to make music with the child or young person themselves using the resources. You don't need to be an expert musician in order to engage your young person with music using the resources we've made. And that's a crucial thing. The most important relationships in a young person's life are those with their family. And what we try to do, we don't substitute for those relationships. We try to empower and strengthen those relationships. And that's a crucial part of the With Music in Mind service. And we've been very, very lucky in being supported extremely generously by a number of different organisations through the research and through the development of the materials. The funders, particularly on this occasion, were the Limbury Trust and the G.C. Gibson Charitable Trust. And of course, I must thank my employer, the University of Roehampton, for giving me the time to undertake this very important work. So there we are. I think that's all the presentation part over, but I'll be very happy to answer any questions you have, and also to take emails and calls, obviously, once we've finished, if families would like to get in touch. The thing to do is just to go to the Amber Trust website and you'll find all the contact details there. But I'll leave it there and hand over to Angela, who I think is going to field questions. Thank you.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. So we have a few questions that have come in and just some thanks as well. So I'll go with the first, just a practical question about how many children you hope you'll be able to reach through the scheme.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So over the years, I think the Amber Trust by some margin has been the sort of biggest provider of musical activities for young people with Batten disease. I think at one stage we were supporting over 30. And bear in mind there are about 100 children with Batten disease in the UK. So I think we really were central to a lot of those children's lives. With the new service, we anticipate 2021 we'll support about 20 to 25 families. And we're going to build up slowly over the years, so probably 25, 30, maybe 35 young people. I should say that if there's demand, then I'm absolutely determined with other trustees that we will find a way of meeting that demand, because music, if it's important for all people, it really is absolutely crucial for this group. For everyone, other people who may wish to access the service, perhaps as young adults, perhaps in other countries apart from the UK, everything is freely available online. So you can also access the materials that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, another question has just come in about how professionals can refer families to the service. Can you give information about that?
Yep, so the best possible thing, rather than try and remember lots of complicated URLs, which I can't remember either, just Google the Amber Trust. You'll come to the website, and if you click on, there's a link to With Music in Mind. You'll get all the information you need there, whether you're a professional or a family, or indeed a practitioner who might be interested in the work. I should also say, Angela, that there's the Sound Touch, which is the resources for professionals working with visually impaired children. And there's a special part of that site for those working with children with neurodegenerative disease. So it's well worth professionals having a look at that as well. That's a very important resource.
Okay, thank you. There's a question also that just came in about whether you've thought about expanding With Music in Mind to people with other conditions like autism spectrum or other behavioral disorders. So is it applicable to a wider population of children and young people? Yes, indeed. Yeah. In fact, we offer another service called Amber Plus, which is aimed at children and young people with complex needs in addition to vision impairment. The latest data from the DFE seems to suggest that about 3/4 of blind and partially sighted children have additional disabilities. And one of the commonest areas of overlap is autism. And that, as we know, brings with it, bring with it communication challenges and behavioral challenges. Mainly, I think, communication challenges. I'm a great believer that if you sort communication out, then a lot of behavioral challenges evaporate. But over the years, I've worked with many children with autism, including those who are visually impaired and those who aren't. And you're absolutely right that the sort of resources we've developed are incredibly appropriate for children with autism, who in many ways share similarities with some blind children in terms of the challenges of language, the challenges of socialization, and so on. And they are all freely available on the Amber Plus section of the Amber Trust website. But please, you can also, if you just Google me, you'll get my email address at the university. So do get in touch. I get contacted by lots of families every week, and that's lovely because increasingly I'm able to point them to resources, which is, before I was having to make them all up from scratch each time, which is time consuming. It's lovely now that we've got a bank of things that people can turn to. Thank you. Kind of along the lines of that, you mentioned this scheme is for children and young people up to 18 years, but
you did mention adults and older people with dementia. So could any of the resources be used for adults older than 18 years?
Yes, indeed. I've done a lot of work in the last 2 or 3 years with adults with dementia. And at first I was quite hesitant to use some of the materials that I'd use with younger people. But you know what, having done it, it was exactly the same. The songs and the musical activities had exactly the same effect with older people. And all those, the anecdotes, the stories you see on YouTube are absolutely true. You can go into a home for people with dementia and it seems as though not a lot is happening. People tend to be quite sort of slumped and disengaged. And you think, to be honest, your heart sinks a bit and you think, what's going to happen next? And then you know what, you start singing quietly in the corner, you start playing. And one by one, I remember so clearly, his fingers start to twitch and then heads come up. And people start singing, people who haven't spoken. And indeed, one lady who hadn't got out of a wheelchair for 3 or 4 years suddenly tried to get up and dance. And the staff were very worried in case her hips were no longer up to it. But it's just extraordinary. Music really is this magic stuff. It seems to, it just accesses the brain in ways that no other drugs or anything else can do. It's something so natural for us. It's very part of our ancient evolution, is that we would sing and dance together as for hundreds of thousands of years. And it seems to be as the brain loses its faculties that this ability, this musical ability, remains and can be tapped into right until the very end of life. I've worked with people really at the end of life who are still capable of learning new songs and still capable of engaging. And it really is incredibly moving and I think profoundly important for how we think of ourselves as human beings. Anyone who thinks of a human being without thinking of music is missing the point, I think.
Thank you. And then I think just maybe one more question. Actually, I think you answered it already about how families can apply to the scheme. But I think that's pretty much all that's come through.
Okay.
Oh, one question, actually one good question came through since we have more time, if I can add that one to the list.
What it is, Angela, yeah.
Just any recommendation about how professionals and teachers can engage over Zoom during lockdown? And I know Amber has done a lot of positive work during lockdown, so I don't know if you can start that a bit.
Yes, I work with a lot of young people at weekends and so on, and it's, we all pretend that Zoom is great, and we're carrying on. It's tricky, and you have to work hard at it to make it really effective. I think it takes more planning as a teacher. You have to do things, perhaps it's best if sessions are slightly shorter and more focused. I think it's really helpful to have supportive people on the other end, who's the young person, and best practice as you should anyway. But I found it works really well when parents, teachers and teaching assistants get involved. And in the same way that you'd work perhaps with a young person with Batten disease through their teaching assistant or through their parent or helper as a team, I think the crucial thing with Zoom and other platforms is to think of that team as well. Don't direct your ideas to the parent and to the young person concerned, so that it really is seen as a team effort, and then it can work quite well. Be patient with the technology, because as we all know, it can come in and out. I'm sort of hoping by the time we get a third wave, if ever we do, then it'll be possible to do music simultaneously. At the moment, you have to accept the fact that one person plays or sings, and then you have to be quiet while the other person does on the other end. Simultaneity just doesn't work with these platforms. And maybe that'll be something for the future. But for now, it's certainly better than nothing. And provided you're organized and not overly ambitious, involve other people, then it can work really well.
I'm sorry, I actually have to admit I missed some of the questions that came through, so there are some really great ones.
Okay.
So you're not off the hook yet.
Sipping my gin and coffee.
So there's a good question actually about if you're working with more than one child. Could you work with 2 children together? Or would it be better to have separate visits?
Yeah. So one of the lovely things with Lily at Linden Lodge And Lily almost insisted on it, actually, that we got a whole group. And Lily absolutely, I mean, the great thing about music is it's a social activity. And it's one of the very few ways that a blind child with additional complex needs, perhaps limited communication, can reach out to others in the group. You saw that with Luke as well. Luke absolutely adored having his band together. You could see Ashley Turley and Derek Parabicini there, amongst others, Francis. And all these young people are blind and all have challenges with communication and other sensory issues. And yet, put them together in a music group and they're one. They can do things together they could never do any other way. And I'm absolutely passionate about using music in a social way. And the sessions with Lily were joyous. We had a complete mixture of people on Monday evenings at Linden Lodge School, and all of them joined in their different way. There was a young man who was deaf and blind. There were other people who didn't speak at all, and yet they could all make a contribution. And Lily, in her inimitable way, made sure they all joined in as well. So it really was very great fun.
Yeah. That's great, and that links in with them. There's a great question here about how you interact with siblings of the children in the families that you work with, if they're present as well.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely crucial. Whenever I visit families and now visit families on Zoom, I always say hello to the sibling first if I possibly can, because it can be dispiriting and quite difficult for siblings when the knock on the door is always about the other child. Music is again a great way of engaging the whole family. I was giving someone a piano lesson yesterday, and he was about 7 or 8, I think, and his older sister was helping, and it was wonderful because she was really enjoying it as well. In fact, it was like giving a lesson to 2 of them, but in a way he would respond to his sister in a way that was probably the best possible thing, and she felt empowered and important because she was being the piano teacher for her little brother. And yeah, I believe everyone in a family is a potential resource. Like everyone in a classroom at school is a potential resource, whatever your function. And music is something we can all do, and the more people that join in, the better. If you're in the room, then you're part of the music group. I think that's the rule.
Yeah, thank you. There's a good question here about the sounds of reference that you mentioned. So is there any information or research available that people can read about sounds of reference in more detail?
Yes, there's a couple of academic papers that I've written. So if people want to get in touch, I can send you those. There's some information on as part of the resources, both with music in mind and also for Amber Plus. But actually, it's something there we really need to produce probably a resource about using sounds of reference. So there's a bit, and there's some academic work, but not yet a kind of easily assimilable public document. So thanks for the prompt. But do look on site. Yeah.
And there is, I think we have time for a few more. So there is another question, and because I know you're doing some work on this, about would you also work with children who have hearing loss, as they also have communication language difficulties? Absolutely, yes. I mean, I suppose one of the fortunate things about Batten disease, if there's anything fortunate, is that hearing doesn't seem to be affected. But certainly there are other conditions on that list where hearing is affected. And it's the most extraordinary thing, but actually music can be incredibly important for deafblind children as well. Again, if you look on the sound touch part of the website, there's a boy called Felix who has Charge syndrome, and so he's deaf and blind. And music for him is again, a magic stuff. He feels it through his body, and he absolutely adores the drums. In fact, he was a member of the group with Lily, and he would take up a position next to the big piano, and he would just sort of lie holding the piano, and that way he could hear. I think because the whole piano vibrated when everyone did something, he could really appreciate that. And all the evidence is that a lot of the musical activities that we think of as for all children actually work really well with deaf children. As you say, Angela, we're just doing a project about that.
looking at how particular adaptations might be made. For example, thinking of low frequencies, thinking of vibration, thinking of movement, thinking of visual stimulation. Again, if you're particularly interested in that, do get in touch, because we're just developing and piloting some resources in the next few weeks with the National Deaf Children's Society. So absolutely, it's on our list.
Great, thank you. There's a good question here about, you talked about working with families, but someone has asked how the resources can be used in schools, and can they be used and followed in school?
Absolutely, yes. I think it's incredibly important for all young people with disabilities that we're a team, that the child is at the heart of the team. They're the most important part, but parents and teachers, teaching assistants, and organizations like AMBER really become part of that team. That's when it works best. And so the resources absolutely can be used within schools. They're all, as I say, freely available to download, or if you wanted to buy a copy from Routledge, they're also available. But yes, they're for everyone. Another key thing, Angela, is that AMBER acknowledges the important place that music specialists play, but it also, we passionately believe that everyone is musical and that everyone can join in with a child's musical development. And you know, the children will love you and respect you all the more if you have a go. Sometimes people are quite shy about singing and things. Yes, I remember with Lily, you know, some people were felt a bit awkward about singing with Lily, and yet when they saw her have a go, you think, wow, of course I'll have a go. And Lily absolutely loved it, as you could see. She was pointing at different people in the room to ask them how they were feeling, and of course you have to sing back to her, because that's music is her natural language. So everyone should get involved. Yeah.
And there is another question about practitioners who actually want to work on the scheme. So actually someone's even contacted from the US. So are you looking for people to train in the With Music in Mind program and be part of the service? And how might that work?
Yeah. I should say that Angela you're going to be heading up our new service. So we are organising a training day in December. We're also recording that, so it'll be available on a private YouTube channel. So if you're interested in working, do get in touch with Angela via the website. Certainly colleagues from the USA or anywhere else in the world who are interested can certainly access the training pack that we're putting together. And again, it's incredibly important. There's diseases like Batten disease and other neurodegenerative disease. They don't know country boundaries. It's something that the more people that work on it internationally, the better. And I think the European project, which involved people from the States, as well as across Europe, showed how important that is. So although AMBER's remit charitably is just for the UK, we're certainly happy to make all our resources freely available to anyone in any other country.
I think if you're willing to answer a few more.
So, if people are going to have tea and cakes or something. Yeah.
So you did mention a bit, a lot about communication and language, and someone has asked if you have any advice for children who are non-verbal.
Yes, of course, it depends the stage they're at in other things, but I do a lot of work with non-verbal children, and for some of them, the sounds they can make and the vocalizations they might be able to make and that you can make might be a powerful means of communicating feelings. For children who are a little more advanced, they might be able to use the micro songs. A lot of I think all the non-verbal children I work with at the moment all use micro songs, both as receptive communication, so I sing to them, and also expressive communication. And it's magic, actually, sometimes seeing a child who's never spoken suddenly convey an opinion about something by saying, no, thank you, or just going, or even just tapping. And suddenly it's yes and no in itself opens up many opportunities. So yes, music is a language. It's in some ways a more basic language than the language we use with words, and so it's more accessible to more people. but it's also a very advanced language because it taps into emotions and feelings that words alone can't. So music is what I call great for differentiation in educational speak. It's good for people with the most complex needs, but also for advanced communicators who want to express emotions. Perhaps people with autism who can't do it through words might well be able to express themselves through playing or singing or joining in. So absolutely, music's there for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And there's an important question about children and families joining the scheme. So can children start the program as soon as possible after diagnosis, around age 3 or 4? And the second part of the question is, can children start at a later stage of the disease if they haven't been able to access it earlier before?
Yeah, so there are different variants of Batten disease, and the other diseases take different courses. It happens with Batten disease that very often blindness is the first thing that's noticed with one variant. With others, it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes some families unfortunately have siblings, so they may be looking out for a younger child having the same sort of course of the disease as their older sibling. And we're absolutely keen to get in as soon as possible, because the more music, the more activities, the more engagement you can do early on, the better the quality of life will be for that child. Having said that, sometimes things only become apparent much later on. And so we're very, very happy to work with anyone really at any stage in their journey. Music has a part to play wherever you pick it up. Whichever station, whichever stop you pick up your music on, it's going to be helpful. Clearly, the earlier the better. But having said that, I started work with Lily quite later on, and she was able to communicate through music, although her speech had already started to deteriorate quite badly by the time we worked together. So, absolutely, any stage.
Thank you. And I think there's one more great question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, 2 more great questions. One is whether there are lessons from the research that can be transferable to context with students who don't have special educational needs to create a more inclusive classroom. So whether these resources can be used within context with students who don't have special educational needs.
Yes, that's really interesting. And people don't know, but Angela's just finished a PhD on music in the early years. And a lot of it was based on very similar sorts of thinking. And so I think it's absolutely the case, certainly in early years settings, that all the resources can be of enormous help. And certainly in primary schools as well, at Key Stage 1, aged 5 to 7, in other words. Key Stage 1 is UK. In fact, it's English speak for children aged 5 to 7. But certainly for that group, I think later on, some of the more advanced ideas might be helpful for children, but its real place for full inclusion, where they really work well, is, I would say, 0 to 7 for all children. I don't know what you think, Angela. You studied hundreds of young children using a similar framework.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can comment on what you find.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the wonderful things about it is that you can use these resources in an inclusive way, and have all children and family members and in schools working together and using these resources. So I think, yes, I think it's definitely transferable. And kind of in line with that is a question about whether the scheme is available in other languages. I know Sounds of Intent is available in some other languages in terms of the scheme.
Yes, of course. So we've been working hard with our great friend Max Mai from Germany. He's a technical whiz, and he's been helping us put the Little Amber resources into other languages, which will be available very soon. We started doing it with automatic translation programs, which work well sometimes and sometimes don't. So the process is that we're working through with native language speakers to put all our resources that we possibly can into other languages. It's quite a long process, but we're certainly onto it with Little Amber. And clearly our ambition for the longer term is that everything completely accessible to all. I should also say that the resources we're creating for families for this particular project, I'm making available in Braille as well. I think it's really important that young people who use the resource should feel that it belongs to them, and so the music record that we're making is going to be brailled out. My wife is a Braille user, and she's just agreed to do it. Isn't that nice of her? So we have the technology, and we will do it for you. And I think it's terribly important that as blind young people, that resources are accessible to them in their preferred medium.
Fantastic. I think we've managed to answer all the questions, I hope. If not, I think we'll be able to answer them. If, as you said, people can get in touch, and the webinar will be available.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much to both of you. If any questions, if we haven't answered, we'll have a look and we'll send them over, and we'll be able to answer them afterwards via email. If you come up with any further questions afterwards, there will be there'll be an email to all attendees, so you'll have my email address in there, and there's also the ISM email address, which is membership@ism.org. If you wanted to send us any emails there, they'll be forwarded to me, and I'll forward them to Adam and Angela. That's great. Thank you both for a very inspiring presentation. It's been really, really interesting. And thank you to everyone who attended. We hope you enjoyed. We hope to see you at another webinar soon, and please get in touch if you have any further questions. Hope you enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.